Hello guys, don't forget to leave feedback and enjoy the video. Joshua Sanders, a knight, shattered the stereotype that you need to use a sword in order to reach the realm of a master. He is considered the strongest in the Igrant continent, a great hero who ended the war of the Avalon Empire. A knight so courageous met his end in the most powerless manner. Joshua is told that he is a martial artist who's developed mana to the utmost limit. The absolute incompatibility of demonic energy and divine power is now clashing in his body. He'd be dead by now if he were a normal person. Joshua knows what is to come and is agitated as he states that he was never greedy for the throne. He never had the desire for it in the first place. He just wanted the whole world to know of the greatness of the spear and to escape the sorrow-filled life of a concubine's son. He wanted to help his best friend and his lord end the long-lasting civil war in the empire. He wanted to serve as the shield that defends the empire for the rest of his days. He questions his fate and the magic tower. Evergrant responds that the civil war has ended and the emperor is now in a position where he can achieve everything he has planned without any danger. The only thing that the emperor now has to fear is Joshua. The man continues that, for someone, having a spear as long as two people stacked together can completely envelop them with energy. Joshua lays on the ground, helpless. The man thanks Joshua for his efforts, as if it weren't for him, they wouldn't have been here. They are sincerely grateful to Joshua, and with that, they bid him farewell. The Emperor Van Britain turns away, saying he can't bear to watch the last moments of his best friend. Joshua feels deceived. He has 5 minutes before the magic circle explosion takes place. He feels helpless and hopeless, a lousy knight betrayed by a trusted friend. Just as he is about to reach his end, he sees Lugia, the blood-red spear known as the Death Reaper of the battlefield. He takes a hold of it, and just as he does so, an explosion takes place. The distinguished individual of the country of knights, the Avalon Emperor, met Avain NB fitting his fame as the undefeated spear knight. Suddenly Joshua finds himself in a stable, questioning how he ended up there. He realizes it was the place he once resided in, and that he has now returned to the past. He is glad to have received another chance to retaliate for all that had happened to him in the past. As Joshua stands up to process what is happening, he encounters 3 men, Rolls, Royd, and Gort, who he believes are the soldiers of Duke. They ask him harshly about why he hasn't been working, and as Joshua doesn't respond, they call him a mute in a degrading manner, saying he can't talk. They look for his mother Lucia and talk about her in a disrespectful manner, which annoys Joshua. Lucia, the Agnes family's exclusive servant, was the woman whom Duke Agnes forcefully slept with and gave birth to his illegitimate child, Joshua. Joshua gets endlessly bullied since he is an illegitimate child of the Duke. Rolls talks disrespectfully of Lucia, and Royd asks him to keep quiet since they can get into great trouble if someone finds out. Rolls is confident that they could do anything with Joshua and his mother, since Duchess Vanessa has also said that if anything happens, she will handle it and take responsibility for it. They seem disappointed that Lucia isn't around, but they decide to bully Joshua instead. Meanwhile, Joshua manages to regain his energies and is full of wrath as they insult his mother. His training for mana is now different, as he can now reach an optimal state in a short amount of time. It doesn't use or trace the mana in the hall located at the lower abdomen. Instead, it uses the mana scattered in the surrounding mana as it is. His whole body is able to absorb mana. He can now utilize it in an instant. As one of the men approaches to beat Joshua, they are surprised at how Joshua faints while standing still. Joshua has his eyes closed while he tries to gain a handful of mana. He can now easily do things that took him 10 years to learn in his previous life. He musters courage and with great force punches the man, making him fall to the ground. The other 2 men are surprised with the way Joshua managed to beat the man, making him unconscious. Joshua senses a sticky and disgusting lump in his lower abdomen, which should apparently be empty. Joshua looks at the other two men and thinks how hard it is to fight men who have trained with longswords. He thinks that if he beats Royd, Rolls might not come at him since he's the most cautious among them. Just as Royd approaches, Joshua slashes at him and uses his mana to throw him back to the ground, making him unconscious. Rolls is surprised at Joshua's abilities. Joshua finally speaks, warning Rolls that if they come again and insult his mother, they will have to face the consequences. Just as Joshua's done speaking, Rolls runs rapidly, and Joshua falls to the ground as the extreme use of mana makes him weak. The news of Joshua beating the men has reached the castle, and everyone seems to be talking about it with utmost curiosity. They are amazed at the way Joshua, who was considered mute, has finally spoken, and some even feel the news is exaggerated. They also mention how the Duke might consider changing his plans for choosing the next successor. But they are also reminded of how the young master Babel is a magic user and nobody can beat him in succession. The young master Babel has turned 14 and is able to use mana, overshadowing the Duke, who could use mana only at the age of 16. Joshua shows up and asks the soldier to tell the Duke that he has come. Meanwhile, the Duke has called upon Rolls to inquire about what had happened earlier. Rolls shows the Duke the uniform made of orc leather crumbled and distorted. The Duke can't seem to wrap his head around the fact that a 9-year-old can possess and use mana. Chiffon says it's almost impossible in the history of the continent. He believes that Rolls is just making up stories and threatens to get rid of him if he doesn't tell the truth. The Duke says it's about time he met Joshua. The Duke is informed that Joshua has arrived to meet him. While waiting to meet the Duke, Joshua catches a glimpse of a portrait of Van Britton on a wall, which agitates him as he was betrayed by Van, whom he considered his best friend in his previous life. There is a sense of anger deep within his heart. He is attacked by a young boy, and in no time the Duke, along with Chiffon, arrive. The Duke is angry as to why they were fighting, and the young master says that they were just greeting. Joshua doesn't kneel down to greet the Duke, which annoys Chiffon. The Duke then takes Joshua's wrist to see if he has mana, and just as he does so, he feels a form of energy that he can't seem to understand. The Duke lets go of Joshua's hand and is surprised to find no signs of mana in his body. The Duke is bewildered, as any being alive innately has some magic, but Joshua has none. Chiffon tells the Duke he already knew that Joshua had no mana and was just a mere being. The Duke thinks to himself that there is something in the mana hall that should feel sticky but makes him feel disgusted. Chiffon says that they should not believe baseless rumors coming from the centurions about Joshua possessing mana at such a young age. The Duke orders Joshua to reside at the castle, which triggers the young master Babel, as he despises Joshua. He orders Chiffon to teach Joshua the basics of being a knight and also to teach him the mana training methods. Chiffon says there's no point in training him since he is inately incapable of possessing mana. The Duke says that he has hope in Joshua. Joshua is ushered to his room, and Chiffon is surprised to have received no response from Joshua after being blessed with all the benefits. Joshua lays on the bed thinking of how the Duke mentioned that he has high hopes for him in the upcoming years. Joshua jumps out of his room at night to regain some strength. Just as he does so, the soldiers are suspicious that someone is hiding, but they find no one there. Joshua manages to escape. Meanwhile, Gort and Royd, the soldiers, have assaulted Joshua's mother. They are scared that if Joshua finds out, he might kill them right away. Immediately after, Joshua shows up and is full of wrath. Joshua warns them to leave, and one of the men, according to Joshua, is a knight that Duke Agnes personally appoints. The Red Knight feels a surreal and bizarre pressure around Joshua that he can't seem to resist. The Red Knight attacks the centurions, bothering Joshua's mother. The soldier begs him to spare him, but the knight doesn't let go of him. Joshua shouts from behind the knight, asking him to stop, but the knight says that the man is guilty of being disrespectful towards the lady of the Duke's family and must be punished. Joshua assumes the Red Knight is of C-class rank, since he was able to subdue the centurions with only a few swings of his sword. Joshua asks the knight who he serves, and the Red Knight responds by saying he serves the Duke Agnes. Joshua orders the knight to sheath his sword and let go of the man. The knight follows commands. Joshua warns him and asks him to tell the soldiers everything he saw today without leaving out any details. The Red Knight, out of curiosity, asks Joshua if he really is the Lord. Joshua is triggered and says that he is no longer a shit cleaner or mute. The knight mentions that he will soon be deciding who to serve, and for the upcoming year, he will leave his duty and serve Joshua. Joshua then meets his mother and embraces her, assuring her that he will now protect her at all costs. Joshua is glad to have received another life where he can live as the strongest spear on the continent. At the mansion, the Duke and Chiffon are engaged in a discussion. They discuss that Count Rebrecca, an influential man of the empire, has visited them along with his daughter, Iseline Jin Rebrecca, a genius who reached the second class at the age of 9 and was blessed with mana. He believes Rebrecca has come with the intention of wooing his daughter to young Master Babel. The young Master Babel has 3 years until his coming-off ceremony, and he already has Lady Cheryl, who is the daughter of the Pontier family, which rose to dukedom with only their riches. The Duke is considering Joshua for Iseline. Chiffon is surprised as he says that Lady Iseline has received the mana blessing while Joshua has the mana curse. In the northern part of the Duke's garden, there is an old stone. Joshua is trying to get to the top and reminisces about how he used to often visit the place. He remembers how he discovered Lugia here. He deliberately bit his hand to get some blood out of it, and as the blood dripped, he put some on the ground, and a circular energy formed around him. It is a source for him to get to the temple that possesses the Lugia. As he approaches the temple, he realizes it has been ruined, and that the Lugia was once stuck here wrapped in chains. As he touches the Lugia, he feels a force, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in an all-white place. Joshua hears a strange voice that says, "I'm not an iron rod. I'm the demon god's spirit, Lugia." Joshua is confused and asks if the Lugia he spent his previous life with was the demon god's spirit, which has also changed shape. "We have no time," says the iron rod. Joshua is told that, as time passes, the 2 energies within his body will eat away at his life. In order to settle the 2 energies, he requires stage 4 of magic spear arts. On the Igrant continent, swords are the greatest weapon for the knight, and spears are thought of as flimsy weapons. In his previous life, his magic spear arts were at stage 4. At 5th rank, he became the strongest knight in the empire. The iron rod assures him that he is with him and will help him. He takes the Lugia, does certain stunts with it, and says that as long as he's near the Lugia, he can use a certain amount of mana. He believes he will be able to easily defeat Van Britten with the amount of strength he will eventually unleash. Duke Agnes has arrived at the reception and encounters Cheryl and her father, a distinguished figure among the Pontier family's retainers. Cheryl seems to have a connection with the Duke, as she talks in a rather carefree manner. Meanwhile, the Count, Jin Rebrecca, has also arrived alone with his daughter, waiting to meet the Duke. Iseline meets the Duke, and Cheryl is annoyed after finding out that Iseline is also present. She asks if Joshua had actually beat up the 3 centurions, and the knight's answer is that it was all just a rumor and that Joshua had a mana curse. Meanwhile, the Duke talks to Rebrecca about Joshua and asks him to look after Joshua, since Rebrecca is more sensitive to mana than the Duke himself. Chiffon asks the Duke if they can first confirm if Joshua was really born with a mana defect. The Duke is somewhat annoyed as he says that they can't use a Crimson Knight on a 9-year-old boy. Chiffon convinces the Duke that he has someone under command who is perfect for this task. Cain, the knight who protected Joshua's mother, reported earlier to Chiffon that the centurions were attacking the Duke's wife. Chiffon is surprised and asks if Duchess Vanessa is all right, and Cain responds that it's Lucia Nim and not Vanessa Nim. Chiffon doesn't consider Lucia to be of any importance. Chiffon tells Cain that he'll spar with Joshua today to check if the young Joshua master really has the mana curse. Chiffon is worried about the fact that Joshua might take over Babel's place, which is why he manages to convince the Duke that Joshua is a mere young boy with no mana. Chiffon asks Cain to inject mana into Joshua's body to see if his body rejects or accepts it. If he opposes the man in his body, he won't be able to survive more than 10 days. Cain is surprised at how openly Chiffon supports Babel and is against Joshua. Cain meets Joshua and tells him that he has been ordered by the Duke to spar with him. Joshua is excited, but Cain says that he won't do it for real since he can't fight his own master. Joshua is offended and says that he shouldn't be taken lightly, and that Cain should give it his best since his sword exists for that purpose. The Duke and others arrive. Chiffon tells Joshua that it's not a test, but a concern from the Duke to confirm if he has any disabilities. The Duke's order tells Cain that it's not him that Joshua is going to fight with, but the young master called Babel. The Duke orders them to spar only with a wooden sword and not a real one since it's just training they are doing. Joshua is all set to show them his true strength and capability. He tells the Duke that he will only be using a stick, which surprises everyone.
Here is the end of the video. For next part, don't forget to subscribe.